The frantic mother was screaming that her 6-year-old daughter had vanished from the crowded mall during Black Friday shopping. But when the mall security guard immediately began implementing search protocols that seemed impossibly professional, she realized the quiet man with the radio wasn't just security. He was a former FBI agent whose child abduction expertise was about to save her daughter's life. The screaming cut through the Black Friday chaos like a knife. "Emma! Emma!" Sarah Chen's voice cracked with pure terror as she spun in circles near the Disney store, searching desperately through the sea of shoppers. One moment, her 6-year-old daughter had been right beside her, excited about the princess dress in the window. The next moment, gone. "She was just here," Sarah sobbed to anyone who would listen. "She was holding my hand. And then, I can't find her anywhere." The crowd barely paused. Black Friday shoppers had their own missions, their own children to watch. But across the main corridor, mall security guard Tom Mitchell heard every word. And unlike everyone else who heard a panicked parent, Tom heard something different. He heard the clock starting to tick. Tom was 52 years old, with graying hair and a quiet demeanor that made him nearly invisible to most mall visitors. For 3 years, he'd been the reliable guy in the navy blue uniform who helped lost customers find the food court and dealt with teenage shoplifters. Nothing more, nothing less. But as Sarah Chen's panic escalated, something shifted in Tom's posture, something that hadn't surfaced in 3 years of mall security work. "Ma'am," he said, approaching with a calm that seemed impossible given the situation, "I'm Tom Mitchell, head of mall security. Tell me exactly what happened." While Sarah frantically described the last few minutes, Tom was already doing something that no ordinary mall security guard would know how to do. He was implementing what the FBI calls the first-hour protocol, a systematic response to child abduction cases that most law enforcement agencies don't even know exists. "Okay, Sarah," he said, pulling out a small notebook. "Emma is 6 years old, wearing what?" "A red coat and pink shoes," Sarah gasped. "She has blonde pigtails with purple hair ties." Tom was writing, but not like a security guard taking a report. He was creating what FBI behavioral analysts call a victim profile, noting not just physical description, but behavioral patterns that would help predict both the child's and the abductor's next moves. "Is Emma shy or outgoing?" he asked. "Outgoing. She talks to everyone. That's what scares me. She would go with someone if they seemed nice." Tom nodded grimly. In his FBI days, he'd learned that friendly, trusting children were preferred targets. But that same openness that made Emma vulnerable could also be what saved her. Outgoing children were more likely to cry out, to resist, to make their presence known. "I'm calling a code Adam," Tom announced into his radio. "All units respond immediately." But as Tom spoke, Sarah noticed something strange. The man's entire demeanor had changed. The mild-mannered security guard was gone, replaced by someone who moved with purpose, spoke with authority, and seemed to know exactly what to do in a situation that had reduced her to pure panic. Code Adam, the mall's child abduction protocol, should have taken several minutes to implement. But Tom had every security guard, every store manager, and every custodian mobilized within 90 seconds. "All exits are now locked down," he reported to Sarah. "No one leaves without being checked." While other security guards began systematically searching stores, Tom was doing something different. He was standing perfectly still in the center of the main corridor, not searching, but thinking. "Why aren't you looking for her?" Sarah demanded. "I am looking for her," Tom replied quietly. "But first, I need to think like him." "Him?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Tom was already operating under the assumption that Emma hadn't simply wandered off. In his experience, and Tom had more experience with this nightmare than any parent should ever need, children Emma's age didn't just disappear in crowded places. They were taken. Tom closed his eyes for exactly 30 seconds, running through what FBI profilers call predator geography. Every mall had optimal locations for approach, isolation, and escape. The Disney store was perfect for approach. Children naturally lingered. Parents got distracted by prices and decisions. But where would someone take a child after grabbing them? Not the exits. Those were now locked down. Not the main corridors. Too many witnesses. Somewhere quiet, somewhere he could control the situation, somewhere he could wait for the lockdown to end. Tom's eyes snapped open. "Service corridors," he muttered. While the other guards searched retail spaces, Tom headed for areas that most mall visitors never even noticed. Every shopping center had a hidden infrastructure. Service hallways, loading docks, maintenance areas where the real work of keeping a mall running happened in invisible spaces. As he walked, Tom's mind automatically shifted into what the FBI called behavioral analysis mode. After 15 years in the Bureau's Behavioral Analysis Unit, he couldn't turn it off even if he wanted to. The suspect would be male, probably between 25 and 45. He'd been watching Emma before he approached her. Child predators always observed their targets first. He'd have seemed trustworthy, maybe claiming to work at the mall, maybe saying he was helping find Mommy. And once he had Emma isolated, he'd need time to decide his next move. The first service corridor was empty. So was the second. But as Tom approached the third, a maintenance hallway behind the department store, he heard something that made his heart stop. Crying. Quiet, muffled, but definitely a child crying. Tom immediately radioed for backup, but he didn't wait. In child abduction cases, the FBI had learned that the first few hours were critical. After that, the statistics became numbers that no parent should ever have to hear. Tom moved down the maintenance corridor with skills he hadn't used since leaving the Bureau. Each step was deliberate, quiet, designed to gather intelligence before action. At the end of the hallway, near a service exit, he could see two figures. A man in his 30s wearing a maintenance uniform he'd obviously stolen or faked, and Emma sitting on the floor, no longer crying but clearly terrified. The man was on his phone, probably trying to figure out how to get past the lockdown. He hadn't noticed Tom yet, which gave the former FBI agent a tactical advantage he knew exactly how to use. "Federal agent!" Tom shouted, his voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in law enforcement. "Step away from the child." It was a bluff. Tom hadn't been a federal agent for 3 years. But the command voice, the tactical positioning, the absolute confidence, all of it came flooding back like muscle memory. The man spun around, startled. For a moment, he seemed ready to run, but Tom was already moving, cutting off the exit route with movements that no mall security guard should have known how to make. "There's nowhere to go," Tom said calmly. "The entire building is locked down. The only choice you have is how this ends." Emma ran to Tom the moment she could, throwing her little arms around his legs. As Tom called for police and paramedics, the man who'd taken her began to realize that his carefully planned operation had been stopped by someone who clearly wasn't just mall security. "Who are you?" the suspect demanded. Tom looked at him with the expression he'd perfected during hundreds of interrogations. "Someone who's been hunting people like you for a very long time." 20 minutes later, as Emma was reunited with her mother and the suspect was led away in handcuffs, Tom tried to blend back into the background. But Sarah Chen wasn't going to let that happen. "You're not just a security guard," she said. It wasn't a question. Tom hesitated. For 3 years, he'd successfully hidden his past. The other mall employees knew him as quiet, reliable Tom who worked extra shifts and never caused problems. They had no idea that before he'd started walking mall corridors, he'd spent 15 years as FBI Special Agent Thomas Mitchell, specializing in crimes against children. "I used to do different work," he said finally. "You saved her life," Sarah pressed. "The way you moved, the way you knew what to do. You've done this before." Tom nodded slowly. "More times than I like to remember." Later that evening, after the mall had returned to normal and the story had been filed away as another successful security response, Tom sat in his small office reviewing the incident reports. But his mind was elsewhere, remembering why he'd left the FBI in the first place. 15 years of hunting predators, 15 years of seeing what humans could do to children, 15 years of winning most battles but feeling like he was losing the war. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was elite, successful, necessary, and it had slowly eaten away at Tom's faith in humanity. The final case had been a kidnapping in Phoenix. 3 children taken from a school playground. Tom's team had worked around the clock, followed every lead, analyzed every behavioral pattern. They'd found 2 of the children. The third had been found too late. Tom had saved hundreds of children during his bureau career, but the one he couldn't save had broken something inside him that even 3 years of peaceful mall security couldn't quite fix. "I thought I was done with all this," he whispered to himself. But as he looked at the report from today, child located safely, suspect in custody, no injuries reported. Tom realized something. He wasn't done. He might never be done. Because somewhere out there, another Emma was going to need someone who knew how predators think, how they operate, how they can be stopped. The next morning, Tom reported to work expecting everything to return to normal. Instead, he found Sarah Chen waiting for him in the mall's main office, along with the shopping center's general manager. "Mr. Mitchell," the manager said, "Mrs. Chen has been telling me about yesterday's incident. She seems to think we don't fully appreciate who we have working for us." Tom shot Sarah a look, but she wasn't backing down. "My daughter is alive because you knew things that no ordinary security guard would know," she said. "I did some research last night. FBI Special Agent Thomas Mitchell, Behavioral Analysis Unit, specialized in crimes against children. 15 years of service, dozens of successful cases." The general manager's eyebrows rose. "Is this true?" Tom sighed. His quiet life, his anonymous existence, his chance to forget the darkness he'd spent 15 years fighting, all of it was disappearing. But as he looked at Sarah Chen, at a mother whose child was alive because of skills he'd tried to leave behind, he realized something. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. "Yes," he said simply. "It's true." "Then I have a proposal," the manager said. "We're opening 2 new locations next year. Both will need security directors, people who can train teams, develop protocols, keep families safe. Interested?" Tom looked out at the mall corridor where, 24 hours ago, a child had vanished and been found again. Where other children would play and shop and grow up, protected by security systems that could be so much more than just cameras and uniforms. "Let me think about it," he said. But in his heart, Tom already knew the answer. He'd tried to leave his old life behind, but yesterday had proven something important. You can't stop being who you are. You can only choose how to use the skills that define you. FBI Special Agent Thomas Mitchell might have turned in his badge 3 years ago, but the man who knew how to hunt predators, how to find missing children, how to stand between innocent families and the darkness that threatened them, that man was still there. And maybe it was time to let him work again. 6 months later, Tom Mitchell's name appeared in security industry magazines as an innovator in family safety protocols. His behavioral awareness training for mall security teams was being adopted across the country. And in a quiet suburb outside the city, Emma Chen was growing up safe, watched over by a mother who never took another moment for granted. But the most important change was in Tom himself. He'd learned that running from who you are doesn't work. The skills that had haunted him in the FBI, the ability to think like a predator, to spot danger before it strikes, to act when others freeze, those weren't curses. They were gifts that could protect innocent people like Emma. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight aren't against external enemies. They're against the parts of ourselves we're afraid to embrace. Tom Mitchell had spent 3 years trying to be someone ordinary, someone safe, someone who could sleep without nightmares. But heroes aren't made by avoiding danger. They're made by choosing to stand up when danger finds them anyway. Today, if you visit North Shore Mall, you might notice that their security feels different, more professional, more aware, more ready. And if you look closely at the quiet man in the supervisor's office, you might see something in his eyes that suggests he's seen more darkness than most people can imagine. But you'll also see something else, the calm confidence of someone who's decided that his experience with darkness is exactly what makes him qualified to protect the light. What do you think? Have you ever met someone whose quiet job masked an extraordinary background? Someone who used their hidden skills to protect others? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe to the Veteran Chronicles for more stories of silent heroes who continue serving long after their official duties end.